A woman in a luxury SUV drove straight into my yard and demanded that I hand over my house keys because she claimed she was the new owner of my property. My name is Peter Ramirez, 63 years old, a retired engineer. I thought I'd seen enough nonsense in my lifetime. Until that morning. On my 10-acre ranch, the one I inherited from my late uncle, I was watering the flowers, enjoying the smell of fresh-cut grass and the calm of the weekend. The sunlight danced across the red brick walls in my old pickup truck. It was supposed to be a peaceful day. Then came the screech of tires. A silver SUV sped down my private driveway, gravel flying everywhere. Out stepped a woman in a white blazer and dark sunglasses radiating arrogance. She pointed at me and declared in a tone that could cut steel, "I'm Elena Rivera, HOA president, and the rightful owner of this property. Hand over the keys now." And just like that, my quiet morning was over. Before we dive into the madness, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And don't forget to subscribe for more outrageous HOA stories like this one. The first thing that hit me wasn't her tone, it was the sheer absurdity of what she said. For a moment I thought she was joking. Maybe she was lost, or maybe she was a realtor checking out the wrong address. But then I noticed her expression, that tight, condescending half-smile people wear when they think they're in control. I took a deep breath, set down the garden hose, and wiped my hands on my jeans. "Excuse me," I said calmly. "Maybe I misheard you. You said, 'You own my house.'" She adjusted her sunglasses and tilted her chin upward. "That's correct. The closing was finalized this week. I'm here to take possession immediately." Possession. She said it like she was seizing a kingdom. I gave a small, incredulous laugh. "Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake. This property isn't for sale. It hasn't been for decades." Her lips tightened. "Don't play games with me. I have documents." She reached into her sleek leather folder and pulled out a stack of papers. The wind caught the edges, flicking through them like the pages of a bad script. I caught a glimpse of my own address printed in bold at the top, but the text below looked off. Wrong formatting, wrong header, wrong font. If you've seen enough legal documents in your life, you know when something's fake. Still, I stayed polite. "May I see those?" She hesitated, clutching them against her chest like sacred scripture. "You'll hand over the keys first, and then we can review them." "HOA procedure. HOA procedure," I repeated, trying not to laugh. "This house isn't part of the HOA, Ms. Elena Rivera," she said sharply. "President of the Green Valley Homeowners Association. And this property is part of Green Valley now. The board voted to include it in the last expansion." I blinked. "You voted to take my land." She gave a small shrug. "Annexation for aesthetic consistency. The board wants all neighboring lots under uniform management. Your property was, how did we put it, visually inconsistent with community standards." I stared at her. My red brick house stood apart from the white-trimmed vinyl homes beyond the fence line. My gravel driveway was private. My mailbox, old-fashioned and sturdy. I liked it that way. And now this woman, this HOA queen, was claiming she owned it. I felt my pulse rising. "Listen, Miss Rivera, this land has been in my family for 40 years. I inherited it from my uncle Samuel Ramirez, and I've got every document to prove it. You must have the wrong address." She took a slow step closer, clicking her heels on the stones like a judge approaching the bench. "I'm not mistaken. The address on my file is 4125 Willow Creek Drive." "That's this property, isn't it?" I nodded cautiously. "Then you're the squatter," she snapped. "You'll need to vacate immediately." For a second I was too stunned to respond. "You're serious?" Her jaw clenched. "Do I look like I'm joking?" "Frankly, yes," I said, folding my arms. "Because if this is your idea of taking possession, you're about 3 steps away from getting yourself arrested." That hit a nerve. Her face reddened. "I'm calling the authorities," she barked, pulling out her phone. "You've trespassed on HOA property and refused a lawful order to surrender the premises." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "You can call whoever you like, ma'am, but while you're at it, you might want to call your lawyer too. You've been scammed." That stopped her mid-dial. "What did you just say?" "You've been scammed," I repeated. "Whoever sold you this land doesn't own it. I can show you the deed inside if you'll calm down and come take a look." But she wasn't listening. Her fingers flew across the screen as she started filming me. "Nice try," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Caught on camera, the scammer trying to intimidate the rightful homeowner. Now it was clear this wasn't just entitlement, it was delusion. She began walking around the yard, muttering to herself, and taking pictures of everything, my truck, my mailbox, even the old windmill near the fence. She narrated as she went, documenting the squatter's personal effects. possible damage to HOA property. Violations of Community Design Code. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Lady, you're on private land. You might want to stop trespassing before you make this worse for yourself. She spun around. Private, this land is HOA jurisdiction now. Everything you see here belongs to the Green Valley community, including that garden. She pointed at my vegetable patch, the one I'd planted with my uncle years ago. That was the moment my patience cracked. I took a slow breath, trying to keep my tone measured. I'm going inside to get the paperwork. Don't move my tools, don't touch anything. I'll be right back. She smirked. You can run, but this will be reported as interference with lawful possession. I didn't reply. I walked inside, locked the door behind me, and went straight to the small safe in my study. Inside were neatly stacked folders, property deed, will tax records, and a letter from the county confirming transfer of ownership. Everything was legitimate and notarized. I pulled them out along with an envelope of old family photos showing me and my uncle building the fence proof of our connection to the land. By the time I stepped back outside, Elena was standing near my truck, still on her phone, pacing like a lawyer rehearsing a case. I held up the documents. All right, Miss Rivera, here's my proof. The deed's in my name, the county records are up to date, and the taxes are paid through next year. You've been tricked by whoever told you otherwise. She didn't even look. Those are forged, she said flatly. Forged. Yes. The seller I bought from Catherine Moore Realty provided all legitimate documents. You'll be facing charges for fraud and trespassing. The name hit me like a punch. Catherine Moore. That was the realtor who helped my uncle transfer this property to me years ago. She'd retired and moved to Florida. Something clicked in my mind. Whoever sold Elena this house must have used Catherine's old credentials to fake a sale. Elena, I said carefully, Catherine Moore doesn't work anymore. Whoever you dealt with wasn't her. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second, then hardened again. You're lying. Why would I lie? I can call her right now. She'll tell you herself. I don't need to hear anything from you. She raised her voice. You're the scammer here. I'm calling the police right now. And she did right there in front of me. I watched her stomp toward the end of the driveway, shouting into her phone. Her voice carried across the open air. Yes, officer, there's a man trespassing on my property. He's pretending to be the owner and refusing to leave. I let out a long sigh and leaned against the porch railing. I'd dealt with plenty of HOA nonsense over the years. Threats about paint colors, lawn height, even mailbox size. But this was something new. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. But as I looked at Elena pacing back and forth, red-faced and shaking with fury, I realized something else. This wasn't just a funny misunderstanding. This was about to become a full-blown legal mess. I pulled out my own phone, scrolled to the non-emergency number for the county sheriff, and dialed. Sheriff's office, a calm voice answered. Yes, ma'am, I said. This is Peter Ramirez, out on Willow Creek Drive. I believe I've got a case of mistaken property ownership here. You might want to send someone before this woman gets herself into more trouble. The dispatcher promised to send units right away. As I hung up, Elena turned back toward me, triumphant. They're on their way, she announced. You'll be removed and charged within the hour. I met her glare evenly. Perfect, I said. Then we'll let the law decide who's trespassing. For a long moment we stood there, two people on opposite sides of a line, her arrogance against my patience, her delusion against my truth. And somewhere deep inside, I couldn't help but think, this is exactly how HOA wars begin. The wind had picked up, carrying the scent of dust and dry grass, as we stood locked in that ridiculous standoff. Elena Rivera, HOA president, self-declared owner of my home, was pacing near her SUV, like a prosecutor preparing her opening statement. I had seen arrogance before, but hers had a particular flavor, the kind that came from years of getting her way and never being told no. I sat back down on my porch chair, deliberately calm, and waited for the cavalry to arrive. I didn't have to wait long. Within 15 minutes, I heard sirens in the distance, not the frantic kind that scream emergency, but the slow rolling wail that says someone's about to get embarrassed. Elena's smirk widened when she heard it. She straightened her blazer, brushed invisible dust off her sleeves, and said smugly, Finally, justice is coming. I sipped my coffee. Yes, ma'am. Justice is definitely coming. 2 patrol cars turned up my gravel driveway, crunching over the stones, their lights swirling red and blue against the morning sun. The neighbors, the HOA residents who'd been pretending not to watch, peeked out from behind their manicured hedges, ready for a show. Out stepped 2 officers, Lieutenant Daniel Brooks, a tall, graying man with the patience of a saint, and Officer Megan Hill, younger, sharp-eyed, and already jotting notes in her pad. Elena practically sprinted toward them heels, stabbing the dirt like tiny daggers. Officers, she called out, waving dramatically. Thank goodness you're here. This man, she jabbed a finger in my direction, has broken into my property. He's refusing to leave and he's threatening me. Megan raised an eyebrow. Daniel just sighed. All right, ma'am, he said gently. Why don't you start from the beginning? She launched into her monologue, fast, loud, self-assured. She claimed she'd closed on the property earlier that week, that she had a valid purchase contract from a certified realtor, that she'd arrived to find a squatter illegally occupying her new home. Every sentence sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in front of a mirror. I waited patiently on the porch, papers in hand. When Daniel finally turned toward me, I smiled politely. Sir, can I get your name? He asked. Peter Ramirez, I said, offering my ID and a thick folder. I inherited this land from my uncle Samuel Ramirez last year. Here's the deed, the tax records, and a notarized letter from the county. He nodded and began flipping through the documents. I could see his eyes narrowing, not in suspicion but in concentration. Everything checks out so far, he murmured. Behind him, Elena crossed her arms, scoffing loudly. Oh, please. You're really gonna fall for that. Those papers are fake. My realtor said the previous owner was a woman named Catherine Moore. I looked up. Catherine Moore. Elena nodded vigorously. Yes, Catherine Moore Realty. She sold me this house and handled the closing. I even transferred the funds through her agency. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Catherine Moore, the name was real enough, but the woman she was talking about couldn't possibly be the same. The real Catherine Moore had retired over a year ago. I'd attended her farewell lunch myself. Elena, I said slowly, Catherine Moore doesn't sell houses anymore. Whoever took your money wasn't her. Liar, she snapped. You're trying to confuse me, you and your fake papers. Megan stepped forward, notebook in hand. Miss Rivera, do you have your purchase documents with you? Elena blinked. They're at home, she stammered. But I can get them if you'll come with me. Daniel closed the folder in his hands and gave her a measured look. Ma'am, we'll review those documents when you have them, but based on the county record I'm seeing here, Mr. Ramirez is the legal owner. The deed was transferred to his name over a year ago. Her face went crimson. That's impossible. I'm afraid it's not, he said evenly. You may have been the victim of a real estate scam. She stared at him as if he'd just spoken another language. Then she burst out laughing, short, high-pitched, disbelieving. A scam? Oh no, officer. I don't get scammed. I'm the HOA president. I deal with contracts all the time. Daniel's voice softened. Even experienced people can get caught in a fraud, ma'am. Her laughter stopped. Her eyes turned cold. No. You're all in on this. You're protecting him. I stayed quiet, letting her dig herself deeper. Ma'am, Megan said gently, can you tell us how you made the payment? Elena folded her arms again, chin up. Wire, transfer, direct to the escrow account. Do you have the receipt? At home, she said again. Daniel exhaled slowly. All right. Why don't we call this realtor of yours and verify her identity? For the first time, Elena hesitated. I don't have her number memorized. That's fine, I said. I have the real Catherine Moore's number right here. I pulled my phone out and showed them her contact information. Elena's expression hardened into defiance. I don't believe you. But Daniel took the number dialed and turned on his speaker. Hello, came Catherine's familiar voice after a few rings. Mrs. Moore, this is Lieutenant Brooks with the County Sheriff's Department. I'm with a Mr. Peter Ramirez regarding a property you handled a year ago, 4125 Willow Creek Drive. Oh yes, Catherine said warmly. That was Peter's inheritance, wasn't it? I remember that property well. Daniel nodded. And have you sold it again recently? There was a pause. Then Catherine laughed lightly. Sold it, no. I retired last spring. I haven't handled a single listing since. You could practically hear the air go out of Elena's lungs. Thank you, ma'am, Daniel said. That clears things up. He ended the call and turned to Elena. Ma'am, whoever took your payment wasn't Catherine Moore. You'll need to file a fraud report. But as of now, you have no legal claim to this property. Her face was white with fury. No, you don't understand. I paid for this place. I wired every penny of my inheritance. This is mine. Her voice cracked on the last word. For a second, I saw something flicker behind her. Anger, fear. The kind that comes when the truth finally lands. But then, like a switch flipping, she straightened again. I'm not leaving, she hissed. You'll have to drag me off my land. Daniel sighed. Ma'am, if you refuse to leave, we'll have to consider that trespassing. Elena pointed at me. He's the trespasser. Megan shook her head, her patience thinning. Ma'am, we've checked the records. Mr. Ramirez owns this property. Please step back from the porch. Elena ignored her, marching toward me with a shaking finger. You think you're so clever, old man? But the HOA will make this official. We'll take everything you've got. I stood up slowly. Ma'am, you need to calm down before you dig yourself a deeper hole. Don't tell me to calm down, she screamed. You're stealing my dream home. Your dream home, I said quietly, was built on a lie. That did it, she snapped. She lunged toward me, grabbing at the folder in my hands. Before she could touch it, Daniel caught her arm firmly but gently pulling her back. That's enough, he said, his voice firm. You're done here. Elena's body went rigid. You're all corrupt, she shouted, thrashing against his grip. This is my land. I'll sue every single one of you. Daniel didn't flinch. You have the right to file any complaint you wish, but right now you're trespassing on private property. We're giving you one last chance to leave peacefully. She glared at me, pure venom in her eyes. This isn't over. And with that, she stomped back toward her SUV, muttering curses under her breath. Gravel sprayed as she sped off, the sound echoing down the road. The officers stayed behind a few minutes longer, taking my statement, scanning copies of the documents, and promising to open a fraud investigation. As they were leaving, Daniel looked back at me. Mr. Ramirez, he said, if she comes back, call us right away. Something tells me she won't let this go easily. I nodded, watching the dust trail fade into the distance. Yeah, I murmured. Something tells me you're right. For a long while after they left, I just stood there, hands on my hips, staring out at the road where her SUV had disappeared. The morning sun was still shining, the same as before. The birds were still singing. But somehow the air felt heavier now, because deep down I knew this wasn't the end. People like Elena Rivera never admit defeat, and in the world of HOAs, a grudge can last longer than a mortgage. For the rest of that morning, the world felt strangely still, like the air itself was waiting for the next round. I tried to go back to my gardening, but every rustle of leaves or hum of an engine made me glance toward the road. I half expected Elena Rivera's silver SUV to come tearing back down my driveway, horn blaring and attitude locked on vengeance. Sure enough, she didn't make me wait long. By early afternoon, the hum of tires echoed once again, followed by the sharp crunch of gravel. But this time it wasn't just her SUV. 3 vehicles turned in: a shiny sedan, a police cruiser, and another unmarked car. Out stepped the same 2 officers from earlier, Lieutenant Daniel Brooks and Officer Megan Hill, plus a man in a suit. He was tall, maybe mid-40s, with the polished look of someone who'd never broken a sweat in his life. I later learned he was attorney Ryan Cooper, the HOA's legal consultant. Elena emerged like she was leading a parade. Her hair was perfect again, her heels spotless, her face a mask of triumphant fury. She pointed toward me before anyone could even shut their car doors. There he is, she barked. The squatter, arrest him already. Daniel gave me a weary look, the kind that said, not this again. Good afternoon, Mr. Ramirez, he said politely. We need to clear up a few things. Mind if we step inside to talk? I nodded, trying to keep my tone calm. Of course, officers. You're welcome anytime. But just to be clear, this is still my property. That earned me a faint smirk from Megan. We stepped inside, the cool air from the old ceiling fan spinning lazily above. Elena refused to come in, claiming she didn't want to contaminate the crime scene. Instead, she stayed outside with her attorney, pacing the porch like a cat ready to pounce. Daniel sat down at my kitchen table, his notepad open. Megan stood by the door, glancing occasionally at Elena through the screen. Mr. Ramirez, Daniel began. Miss Rivera insists she has new documentation to prove ownership. We'd like to review it together. By all means, I said. I'm as curious as you are. Megan called out through the door. Miss Rivera, you can bring your documents in now. Elena swept inside with all the grace of a CEO entering a hostile boardroom. She laid a glossy folder on the table and slid it toward Daniel. There, she said confidently. Signed, notarized, and filed through county records. Daniel flipped through the page's brow, furrowing deeper with every turn. The deed she presented had glaring inconsistencies. The county seal was pixelated, the notary signature looked photocopied, and the document number was missing the final 3 digits. Daniel sighed. Ma'am, these appear to be forgeries. They are not forgeries, she shot back. I paid good money for that contract. My realtor assured me. Who was your realtor again? Megan interrupted, pulling out her notes. Melissa Carter, Elena replied without hesitation. Carter Realty Solutions. I met her online through a private property listing. The name was new to me, and judging by Daniel's expression, new to him too. He exchanged a quick look with Megan. We'll need to verify that business, he said. Can you provide any contact information? Elena hesitated. Her number changed recently. But she said she was working with Catherine Moore Realty as a secondary agent. That did it. Megan's pen froze midair. Ma'am, she said gently, Catherine Moore has been retired for over a year. Elena blinked. No, no, she can't be. I spoke to her assistant. Yes, her assistant Vanessa. She handled all the paperwork. Megan typed something quickly into her tablet, scrolling through official listings. There's no Vanessa listed under that firm. And Carter Realty Solutions doesn't appear to exist in this state. Elena's voice began to wobble. That's impossible. Daniel slid the documents back toward her. Ma'am, I'm sorry to say this, but it looks like you've been defrauded. Whoever sold you this property fabricated these files. The air in the room thickened. For a moment, no one spoke. Then slowly, Elena's shock curdled back into anger. No, she said, her tone trembling. You're all lying. You're in on this with him. She jabbed a finger at me. You two are friends. You probably paid those scammers to make me look stupid. I took a long breath. Miss Rivera, I've tried to be patient. You're a victim here, and I sympathize. But if you keep accusing me, I'll have to press charges for harassment and trespassing. Her face twisted. Harassment. You're stealing my home. It's my home, I said, voice firm now. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can go after the real criminals instead of me. She opened her mouth to shout something else, but Daniel stood up. His patience had run out. That's enough, he said calmly. We're concluding this interview. Miss Rivera, you'll need to come down to the station to file a fraud complaint. Mr. Ramirez, we may need you later to provide a statement as a witness. Elena's attorney, Ryan Cooper, finally spoke up. Lieutenant, before you make any rash conclusions, you should know Miss Rivera is a respected community figure. The HOA board will not tolerate her being treated like a suspect. Daniel gave him a flat look. Sir, your client called 911 twice today claiming ownership of property she doesn't own. That makes this a police matter, not a board meeting. Ryan frowned. We'll see about that. As they moved toward the door, Elena suddenly spun around. Her composure cracked like glass. This isn't over, Ramirez. The HOA will make sure of it. We'll file for annexation. Your land will fall under our jurisdiction, whether you like it or not, I smiled thinly. Good luck with that. You'll need the county, the zoning board, and about $50,000 to even start that process. She glared daggers at me, her voice dropping to a hiss. You think you're clever, but I always get what I want. Then she stormed out, slamming the screen door so hard it nearly came off its hinges. Daniel lingered a moment longer, giving me a sympathetic nod. We'll keep a patrol in the area for a few days, he said. She's unstable right now. Try not to engage if she comes back. I wasn't planning to, I replied. When the cars finally rolled away, silence reclaimed the house. But it wasn't peaceful silence. It was the kind that hums in your ears, the kind that tells you the storm isn't over yet. Over the next 2 days, the tension spread like wildfire. Word of the property dispute raced through the HOA community faster than gossip at a Sunday bake sale. I caught neighbors whispering near the fence line, pretending to water plants while sneaking glances my way. On the third morning, I found a notice taped to my mailbox, HOA, Notice of Violation. Unauthorized structures visible from community boundary. Please remove immediately or face citation. Green Valley HOA Board, I laughed out loud. They were citing me a homeowner who wasn't even in their jurisdiction. And at the bottom, neatly signed in bold blue ink, Elena Rivera, HOA President. That afternoon, I marched over to the community gate with my folder of documents. The guard looked nervous as I asked for the board's office. Inside, a row of volunteers sat around a long glass table. And there she was again, Elena Rivera, arms crossed, chin high, pretending nothing had happened. Oh, Mr. Ramirez, she said sweetly. I was just about to send you another notice. I laid my folder on the table. Save your ink, Elena. The county confirmed again this morning, your HOA has no authority here. If you keep sending fake violations, it's harassment. She smiled. Then sue me. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Don't tempt me. By the time I got home, I was exhausted but not surprised when another patrol car pulled up behind me. It was Megan. She stepped out, hands in pockets, giving me a tired smile. Afternoon, Mr. Ramirez, she said. Mind if I ask a quick question? Go ahead. She showed me her tablet. We ran the name Melissa Carter. No license, no business registration, no real estate ID. The number Miss Rivera gave us is linked to a prepaid burner phone. So she was scammed for real, I said quietly. Megan nodded. Looks that way. The department's cybercrime unit is tracing the payment, but be careful. Okay, people who can't accept being victims sometimes find new targets. I understand, I said. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere, she smiled faintly. Didn't think you would. After she left, I stood on my porch watching the sunset burn gold across the horizon. The windmill creaked softly, and for a brief second the world felt calm again. But deep inside, I could feel it. The fight with Elena Rivera was far from over. If anything, it had just begun. The following week felt like walking through fog, quiet on the surface, but full of something unseen heavy, waiting to strike. I thought maybe, just maybe, after that humiliating encounter at the HOA office, Elena Rivera would finally let things cool down. But people like Elena didn't cool down. They simmered. And when they simmered, they planned. On Tuesday morning, I got a call from Lieutenant Daniel Brooks. "Mr. Ramirez," he said in his steady baritone, "we've been digging into your case. There's more to this than we thought." He explained that their cybercrime unit had tracked Elena's wire transfer, a six-figure payment sent to an offshore account registered under the name Melissa Carter. That same name had been used in several fake property listings across 3 states. The scammer's trail was cold, but the amount of money involved meant the FBI might soon take interest. Unfortunately, that did little to help my immediate problem. A furious HOA president still convinced I was part of a conspiracy to steal her dream home. Daniel sighed before hanging up. "We'll do what we can on our end, Mr. Ramirez. But if she approaches you again, document everything. Don't engage." I promised I wouldn't, but fate as usual had other ideas. That Friday, I woke to the distant rumble of engines. At first, I thought it was construction somewhere down the road. But when I stepped out onto my porch, the sound grew louder and closer. A convoy of white utility trucks rolled into view, engines humming in unison. Each truck bore the bold green logo of Green Valley HOA Maintenance Division. I counted 4 trucks. And standing proudly in front of them, arms folded and sunglasses gleaming, was Elena Rivera. I didn't even have time to curse before she shouted, "Mr. Ramirez, we're here to conduct a property inspection and code compliance review." "Step aside, inspection," I repeated, baffled. "You don't have any authority here," her voice boomed over the rumbling trucks. "You've received multiple citations for violations of HOA standards. We've given you notice. Now we're enforcing compliance." I looked past her. A few of the workers looked uncomfortable, clearly aware something wasn't right. One of them, a younger guy in a neon vest, leaned toward his coworker and whispered, "Isn't this the house outside the boundary? I caught that." So did Elena. "Quiet," she snapped at him. "This property is part of Green Valley as of last month. The annexation paperwork is being finalized." I laughed out loud. "You can't just annex private property because you don't like how it looks, Elena. This isn't medieval Europe." "Step aside, Mr. Ramirez," she said, her voice trembling with fury, "or I'll call law enforcement again." "Please do," I said, pulling out my phone, "because I'll call them first." Within 20 minutes, the same familiar siren echoed down the road. This time it wasn't just Daniel and Megan. A second cruiser pulled up behind them, back up. Elena stood tall, waving her clipboard like a sword. "Officers, perfect timing. This man is obstructing an official community operation." Daniel rubbed his temples. "Ma'am, we've talked about this. The Green Valley HOA has no jurisdiction over this property. If you keep this up, it becomes harassment." She smirked. "I've filed annexation paperwork. The county will approve it any day now." Megan checked her tablet. "No such filing exists, Miss Rivera." Elena blinked. "What, nothing's been submitted?" Megan continued. "And even if it had, annexation requires county hearings, resident consent, and zoning board approval. You don't have that authority." The HOA workers started shifting uncomfortably. A few quietly began backing their trucks away, but Elena wasn't giving up. "You're lying. He bribed you." "You're all part of this." I stepped forward, holding up my phone. "Actually, Elena, this is being recorded and live-streamed. You might want to choose your next words carefully." Her face turned the color of raw steak. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would," I interrupted, "because I'm tired of your threats." For a long moment no one moved. The wind rustled through the tall grass. Even the officers seemed frozen between disbelief and exhaustion. Then Daniel broke the silence. "Miss Rivera, you're officially being warned for trespassing and interference with private property. If you or your contractors cross that fence again, we'll place you under arrest." She laughed, a shrill, desperate sound. "You can't arrest the HOA president." Megan folded her arms. "Try us." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, one of the workers, a man with graying hair and a kind face, stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "we're leaving. We don't want to get mixed up in this." "You'll be fired," Elena barked. He shrugged. "Better fired than arrested." One by one, the trucks rolled back down the driveway, their engines fading into the distance. Elena watched them go, trembling with rage. When she turned back to me, her voice dropped to a hiss. "You think you've won, old man. But this isn't over. I'll sue you for every penny you've got." I didn't even bother replying. Daniel and Megan escorted her back to her SUV, speaking to her quietly, trying one last time to convince her to leave peacefully. But as she got into the driver's seat, I caught one last look at her face, red tear-streaked, twisted by pride. There was fear there, yes. But underneath it, something darker: obsession. That evening, as the sky turned orange and the cicadas began their chorus, I sat on the porch with a glass of sweet tea, watching the sun dip behind the fence line. I thought about Elena, about how fragile people's realities can be when pride and money mix. She'd lost her savings to a scam, her credibility to her own arrogance, and now, little by little, she was losing her mind. But I also knew one thing: she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Sure enough, 2 days later, I got another call from Lieutenant Brooks. "Mr. Ramirez," he said, "you were right. She's still at it." Apparently, Elena had filed a civil complaint with the county clerk claiming emotional distress and unlawful occupation of community property. It was pure nonsense, but it was enough to get the clerk's office to send me a notice, just a formality, but still annoying as hell. Daniel chuckled grimly. "Don't worry, our legal team already flagged it. It won't hold up." I sighed. "She's not going to stop, is she?" "I doubt it," he said. "But here's the good news: we finally got a hit on that fake realtor." The FBI's confirmed the alias Melissa Carter was used by a woman named Missy Franklin, wanted for property fraud in 3 states. Elena's case is part of a bigger operation now. That caught my attention. So they might find her, that's the plan. And when they do, it'll prove beyond question that Miss Rivera was scammed, and maybe then she'll finally leave you alone. I wasn't so sure. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind outside was restless, scraping the old oak branches against my roof. I got up, checked the locks, and stepped outside with my flashlight, a habit I'd picked up since this mess started. The beams swept across the yard, the garden, the fence, the shed. Everything looked normal. But as I turned toward the mailbox, something glinted in the light. A small metal plate had been nailed into the post, engraved with neat black letters: "Property of Green Valley HOA trespassers will be prosecuted." I exhaled slowly through my nose. Unbelievable. My first instinct was to rip it off right then and there, but I stopped myself. No better to leave it. Evidence. I took a photo, time-stamped it, and emailed it directly to Daniel. Then, for the first time that night, I allowed myself a dry laugh. "She's getting desperate," I muttered. "Good. That means she's close to losing." I went back inside, double-locked the door, and poured myself another drink. Whatever storm was coming, I was ready. Because Elena Rivera could scream, threaten, and sue all she wanted, but the truth was a solid thing, and no matter how much noise she made, she couldn't rewrite it. 3 days passed before everything finally erupted. It was a Sunday morning, bright, calm, deceptively peaceful. The kind of day when you'd expect to hear nothing louder than the buzz of bees or the creak of a rocking chair on a porch. I was sitting there myself, sipping coffee, half watching a bluebird perch on the fence. Then from the distance I heard a familiar sound. Tires. Slow at first, then faster, louder, grinding over gravel, until the bird fled in a blur of blue wings. My heart sank even before I saw the car. That same silver SUV came flying down my driveway again, fishtailing slightly, before screeching to a stop. I muttered under my breath. Not again. The door slammed. And out came Elena Rivera. Hair-messy face, flushed eyes, wild with fury. She wasn't wearing her usual immaculate blazer, just a wrinkled blouse half tucked into her pants, and she was barefoot. Barefoot. She stormed toward me, waving a folder above her head. "You thought you could embarrass me in front of my community, didn't you?" she shouted, voice already cracking. "You thought you could humiliate me." I set down my mug and stood. "Miss Rivera, I think you need to calm down." "Don't you dare tell me to calm down," she shrieked. "I have proof now, real proof. You forged every document you showed those officers." She slammed the folder onto the porch table so hard that my coffee cup rattled. I opened it. Inside were a few blurry photocopies, each stamped in bold red letters. "UN verified document." "Elena." I started carefully. "Where did you get these?" "From the county office," she spat. I called and demanded the files, and do you know what they said? They said the originals couldn't be located. You hid them. You erased them from the record. I rubbed my temples. "That's not how records work." "You've been lied to again." Her face twisted. "No. This time I know the truth. You bribed everyone, the realtors, the police, even the county, but you can't bribe me." I took a small step back. Her voice was trembling, almost unhinged. "Elena," I said, trying to sound steady, "listen to me. You're angry, and I understand why. You've been scammed, and it hurts. But this isn't the way to fix it." She shook her head violently, tears welling in her eyes. "No, you don't get it. This land is mine. It's supposed to be mine. I worked my whole life for it." Her voice broke on the word mine, And then before I could respond, she suddenly marched down the porch steps and disappeared around the side of the house. "Elena," I called. "What are you doing?" No answer. I jogged after her, heart pounding. When I reached the backyard, I froze. She was standing near my old wooden mailbox, hammer in hand, a shiny new metal plate ready to be nailed in. On the plate were the same words I'd found days earlier. "Property of Green Valley Ho." "Elena, stop," I barked. She swung the hammer and missed the nail, clipping her own finger. She cursed loudly but kept going. "I'm reclaiming what's mine," she shouted. "You stole this property and now I'm marking it for repossession." I took a slow step forward. "Elena, if you hit that mailbox one more time, you'll be destroying federal property. That's a crime." She paused for a heartbeat, then slammed the hammer down again. "All right," I muttered. "You're done." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher already knew my address before I finished explaining. "Mr. Ramirez," she said, "we've received multiple calls about your location this morning. Units are on the way. Multiple calls." I looked back toward Elena, who was pacing in the driveway now on her own phone. Her hair stuck to her forehead with sweat. "Yes, officer," she shouted into the phone. "He's threatening me again. He's got weapons. I sighed. Unbelievable." Within minutes, sirens blared in the distance. But this time, instead of relief, I felt dread. If she kept escalating, someone could get hurt, and not just emotionally. 2 police cars came roaring up the driveway. Out stepped Lieutenant Brooks, Officer Hill, and another uniformed deputy I didn't recognize. Their faces said everything: exhaustion, irritation, and the quiet prayer that this would be the last time they'd have to visit this address. Daniel held up a hand to me as he approached. "Mr. Ramirez, you—" "Okay, I'm fine," I said. "She's not." He nodded grimly and turned to Elena. "Miss Rivera, we've talked about this. You can't keep coming onto this property." "You don't understand," she yelled, pacing back and forth. "He's a criminal, a fraud. He's been threatening me, ma'am." "No one's threatening you," Megan said gently. "You need to take a breath and listen." But Elena wasn't listening anymore. She pointed toward me with a trembling finger. "You all think I'm crazy, don't you? You think I'm some joke? Well, let's see who's laughing when I take this to court. I'll sue every one of you." Daniel's patience cracked. "Ma'am, please put the hammer down." She looked at the tool in her hand like she'd forgotten it was there. Then she threw it, not at anyone, but straight down onto the gravel, where it clattered loudly. "I'm not crazy," she screamed. Birds exploded from the trees in a rush of wings. The younger deputy stepped forward, cautiously, hand on his belt. "Ma'am, we're asking you one last time to calm down." She shook her head, tears streaming now. "No, no one listens. No one believes me. You're all against me. You're all." Then suddenly she lunged toward me. It happened in a blur. She took 3 quick steps, reaching out maybe to grab my shirt, maybe the phone still in my hand. But before she could reach me, Daniel and the deputy intercepted, each taking an arm. "Elena Rivera," Daniel said firmly, "you're under arrest for trespassing, harassment, and destruction of property." Her scream was raw, primal. "No, you can't do this." The officers moved quickly, professional, but careful, restraining her without force beyond what was necessary. Still, it was hard to watch. For all her arrogance and cruelty, she looked utterly broken. Now, mascara streaking her cheeks, hair-tangled knees scraping the gravel as she fought against reality itself. As they read her rights, she continued shouting, "This is my land, I'll sue, the county I'll." Her words dissolved into sobs. Megan approached me quietly. "You okay, Mr. Ramirez?" "Yeah," I said softly. "Just tired." She nodded. "We're taking her in. There'll be a mental health evaluation before booking. Hopefully that gets her some help." I watched as they led Elena toward the cruiser. Her body sagged in defeat now, but her eyes, when they met mine, still burned with that same mix of hatred and denial. "I'll be back," she whispered hoarsely. "You can't keep me out." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. When the cars finally disappeared down the road, silence returned. But it wasn't the heavy kind this time. It was clean, quiet. I picked up the fallen hammer from the gravel and turned it over in my hands. It was expensive, engraved with the initials ER, probably a gift from some HOA ceremony. For a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I set it down on the porch railing and looked around at my land, the garden, the oak trees, the old barn my uncle built with his bare hands. All this chaos over something that was never hers. The next morning, Lieutenant Brooks stopped by one last time to finalize his report. He looked worn out but relieved. "She'll be in holding until her hearing," he said. "Charges might get reduced if the mental health team recommends treatment." "Good," I said. "She needs help more than punishment." He nodded, closing his notebook. "You handled this better than most people would have, Peter. I mean that." I gave a faint smile. Years of HOA meetings taught me patience, Lieutenant. He laughed at that, a dry, knowing laugh, and then shook my hand. If you need anything, you've got my number. As his cruiser rolled away, I exhaled deeply. Finally, after weeks of chaos, there was peace. But peace always feels fragile after a storm. I knew the scars of this mess would linger in my memory in the community, and maybe even in Elena Rivera's mind. Still, as the sun climbed high over the ranch, I felt something else too quiet: vindication. Because no matter how loud the entitled screamed, the truth always stood taller. And this time, the truth had finally spoken. For the first time in weeks, Monday arrived without dread circling my stomach like a hawk. The house breathed again, quiet boards, soft fan, the metronome tick of the old mantel clock my uncle left me. I watered. The tomatoes tightened a loose latch on the barn and swept a small ocean of wind-blown leaves off the porch. Normal things. Holy things if you've recently lived through HOA warfare. By mid-morning, the phone rang. It was Lieutenant Daniel Brooks. "Morning, Mr. Ramirez," he said. I could hear the scrape of a chair, the hum of an overworked air conditioner wherever he was. "Wanted to update you. The county filed formal charges against Elena Rivera, criminal trespass, vandalism of federal mail property, and disturbing the peace. The DA's office plans to recommend mental health diversion if she accepts it." I leaned on the kitchen counter. "If she accepts it," I repeated. He exhaled. "We also coordinated with state cybercrime. That fake realtor you flagged, alias Melissa Carter, matches Missy Franklin wanted in 3 states. And here's the big one. The FBI opened a case because the fraud crossed state lines and used forged escrow portals. They've frozen 2 accounts tied to the ring." I set my coffee down slowly. "Does that mean some of the funds might be recovered?" he finished. "Not all, but a chunk. Enough to keep her from losing everything." I stared out the window at the sliver of road between oaks. For a long moment I didn't say a word. "That's good," I finally managed. "It doesn't erase what she did, but it's something." "Agreed," he said. "Also, we got a protective order for your property. If Miss Rivera sets one toe over your fence line, she'll be in violation." The relief that moved through me wasn't flashy. It was a low, steady warmth, like a fire you don't notice until the cold's already gone. "Thank you, Lieutenant." "Don't thank me," he said. "Thank boring paperwork and the judge who still believes in fences." We hung up. I stood still long enough for the clock to knock off 12 slow beats. Then I got to work. I started with a fence post. A good fence post is a declaration, a philosophy. You dig deep. You tamp down rock and dirt in layers. You let it sit, then you test it, then you add more. A fence post says, "There's a line here, not because I hate you, because I love what's on this side." By afternoon, I'd installed 3 new posts along the stretch near the subdivision, set in concrete, braced diagonally. I sanded the old sign where sun had eaten the letters and painted new words in black oil stroke: certainty, private property, not for sale, HOA keep out. It felt faintly theatrical, I'll admit. But theatrics have their place when your audience thinks reality is optional. Around dusk, a familiar sedan rolled up the drive, slow and respectful, as if it had rehearsed the approach. Catherine Moore stepped out, retired realtor, short white hair, posture like a willow, flexible but unbroken. She carried a pie and a folder. "I brought pecan," she said, "for your sugar, and documents for your armor." We sat on the porch. The pecan had the proper crackle on top. She slid the folder across the table. "Affidavit from my last day in business notarized. Copies of the original transfer to you and your uncle's will. A statement about my retirement date so the DA can swat down anyone invoking my name." I flipped through the papers. Tight fonts, perfect seals. "You didn't have to come all the way out here, Catherine," she smiled. "I sold 1,000 houses in 40 years. Most of them went to people who said please and thank you. But every few years a shark wandered in wearing church clothes. This felt like one of those. I wanted to see with my own eyes that you're okay." "I am," I said. "Stubbornness is a family trait." "Good," she replied. "Keep it." We ate pie with forks straight from the tin. The sky went violet and crickets tuned their instruments. Somewhere a siren wailed and faded miles away, somebody else's drama unspooling. When Catherine left, she squeezed my arm. "You know," she said, "money makes fools. Power makes enemies. But land makes history. Guard it." Then she drove away, taillights smearing red through trees. The HOA story didn't end when Elena was hauled off. Stories like this never end, they ferment. By Wednesday, the Green Valley HOA held an emergency meeting. Word traveled across hedges like pollen. I wasn't there, God forbid, but I got the recap from my mail carrier, from the hardware store clerk, from a contrite neighbor who'd spent the last month pretending not to know me. Apparently the boardroom was a theater of shame. A dozen residents showed up muttering about overreach and public embarrassment. A landscaper presented an invoice showing the HOA had attempted to bill him for the aborted compliance raid on my yard. He refused to pay. He also refused to work with Green Valley again. Then came the bombshell. The board's attorney, Ryan Cooper, resigned on the spot. The rumor was he'd warned Elena formally in writing not to take any action near my property until the county ruled. She did it anyway. He wasn't about to go down on her ship. By the end of the meeting, a motion to censure the president was on the floor. The vote deadlocked. The vice president, a taut woman with hurricane hair, tabled it until further legal clarity. That's HOA for we're scared and we don't know what to do. They issued a statement the next day. In careful PR, Beige Green Valley HOA acknowledges a series of misunderstandings regarding a neighboring property. We are cooperating with authorities and reviewing internal processes. Not an apology, mind you, but the word misunderstandings is what an HOA says when their crown has slipped and they're afraid it's visible. A week later, someone quietly removed the HOA notice of violation from my mailbox. No note, just absence. Sometimes victory looks like subtraction. The FBI called me on a Friday. A woman named Agent Hollis, voice like a measuring tape, precise, cool. She asked if I'd provide a statement about the phony documents and the forged Catherine Moore tie-in. Of course, I said. We've frozen $142,000 linked to Miss Rivera's transfer, she said. Another $60,000 appears to have been laundered through cryptocurrency and may not be recoverable. We're moving to seize the frozen funds and return them pro rata to identified victims. Does Elena know? I asked. She will, Agent Hollis said. We're coordinating with the DA. A little human relief can help people accept legal reality. I thanked her. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet and listened to the attic settle. I imagined Elena in a small beige room with a plastic plant and a soft-voiced counselor finally being told gently, firmly this: you were wrong and you were wronged. Both can be true. That night, I slept without waking. 2 Sundays after the arrest, I found a letter tucked under my doormat. No HOA letterhead, no legal threats, just thick white paper and a blue ink script I didn't recognize. Mr. Ramirez, I am writing because I don't know how to say this out loud. I was raised to win arguments, not to ask forgiveness. I'm sorry. ER. No paragraphs. No explanations. No, but just 2 words so bare they almost looked naked on the page. I stood there on the step with the letter between my fingers, feeling nothing at first. Then something subtle and stubborn unclenched behind my ribs. I folded the note and put it in the drawer with the tax receipts. Not for evidence. For memory. I didn't write back. It wasn't a conversation. It was a stone set down. The days stacked up and smoothed out. I repaired the windmill's tail, patched a panel on the shed roof, strung a new line of twinkle lights along the porch, because life is too short not to decorate your home like a summer evening. Sometimes a car slowed at the end of my drive and kept going. Sometimes a neighbor waved for too long, guilt lingering, and I waved back for exactly long enough to be kind. A month after the arrest, Lieutenant Brooks swung by in plain clothes. He brought lemonade from the diner and a copy of the court's protective order, embossed and official. She accepted the mental health diversion, he said, handing me the papers. Mandatory therapy, community service. No contact order with you and your property for 2 years. If she completes it, the lower-level charges go away. And the fraud, I asked. Feds will handle that. She's a witness now, not a target. We sat on the steps and drank our lemonade. You know, he said, I've been doing this 28 years. People think the law is about punishment. Most days it's just about guiding folks back to the line. I looked at my fence. Some lines are worth painting twice, he chuckled. You painted yours in bold. When he left, I walked the property once more, fence to fence like a guard changing shifts with myself. The sun spilled like warm milk over pasture grass. My uncle used to say, if you can walk the line and feel only peace, you built it right. I did. I do. At the front gate, I hung a small cedar placard I'd carved in the shop on a rainy afternoon. Nothing dramatic, just a single sentence burned into wood: respect the line. The words caught the light. Not grand, not petty. True. I locked the gate and headed toward the house, a slow, satisfied ache in my legs. Halfway up the drive, I turned back just to look. The fence, the sign, the old red brick catching the last gold of day. For the first time since the white SUV appeared, I believed it fully. The storm had passed. Not because the thunder stopped, because I'd learned the rhythm of rain. The days that followed blurred together in a rhythm of small, good things, the sound of sprinklers clicking at dawn, the gentle rustle of wind through the old oaks, the familiar creak of the porch swing when I sat down with my morning coffee. Peace had a sound again. Sometimes I still expected to see that silver SUV creeping down my driveway. It's strange how quickly chaos can train your senses, how you start to measure silence by the absence of engines, the lack of footsteps where they don't belong. But now the only tracks in the dirt belong to deer and the occasional stray dog. The county eventually sent me a formal letter confirming what I already knew: the property was legally, irrevocably mine. No annexation, no absorption into OA boundaries, no aesthetic alignment policy, just plain ownership. I framed it and hung it right above the front door, not out of vanity, but as a reminder that truth, though sometimes slow, always arrives. One quiet evening, just as the sun melted into a blaze of orange and gold, my neighbor Tom Jenkins walked over from across the field. Tom wasn't part of the HOA. His land bordered mine on the far side. He'd been watching from a respectful distance during the entire ordeal, too wise to get involved, but too curious to ignore it completely. He leaned on my fence and said, "Heard they finally shut her down for good." 2 years of no contact, I replied, tossing him a beer. "She's in counseling. Might do her some good." He popped the can open and took a long sip. "You handled it better than most. If that were me, I'd have lost my damn temper by day 2. I chuckled. "Oh, I lost it plenty of times. I just made sure she never saw it." Tom nodded approvingly. "That's the trick, ain't it? Keep your cool while they burn themselves out." We stood there for a while, watching the sky turn from gold to purple. Then he added quietly, "You know, Pete, HOA folks like that, they don't care about land. They care about control. Doesn't matter if it's 2 acres or 2 feet of sidewalk, they just need to feel like they're in charge of somebody." I smiled. "Yeah. And when someone stands their ground, it reminds them they don't really own anything but their own noise." He grinned, lifted his can in a small toast, and headed back across the field. His figure disappeared into the growing twilight, leaving me alone again with my land, my peace, and a deep, quiet gratitude. The following weekend, I drove into town for supplies, paint, nails, seed mix, all the little things that keep a property breathing. At the checkout counter, the clerk, a young woman with a curious smile, looked at my ID. "Ramirez," she said. "Are you the guy from that HOA thing?" I sighed softly. "Guess that's me. They talked about it at the coffee shop for weeks," she said, handing me my change. "Everyone said you kept your cool while that woman went off the rails. You're kind of a local legend now." "Legend's a strong word," I replied. "I just refused to hand my life to someone who thought rules mattered more than reason." She smiled. "Wish my landlord had that attitude." On my way out, I caught a reflection of myself in the store window. A 63-year-old man, hair grayer than last year, but posture steady, eyes clear. There's something about surviving a storm that gives you a strange new kind of calm. You stop fearing the next one because you finally trust your own footing. A week later, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. The Sender County Superior Court. My first thought was irritation, please, not another legal notice. But when I opened it, I found a small check stapled to a letter. Notice of property restitution. Pursuant to federal case, #Wafarone B partial funds recovered from fraudulent sales scheme conducted by Missy Franklin et al. Distribution claimant, Elena Rivera. Restitution awarded $83, $400 partial. I stared at it for a long time. The words blurred for a moment. I wasn't angry, I was relieved. Maybe this would finally be enough for Elena to stop fighting ghosts. Maybe she could rebuild her life, find peace in something that didn't need to be owned to have meaning. That night I poured a drink and sat outside under a sky so clear it felt like glass. I thought of her, the woman who'd once stood on this same patch of ground screaming about keys and ownership, so sure she was right that she couldn't hear the truth even when it stood inches away. Pride can turn smart people into fools, I thought, and pain can make fools dangerous. A few days later, Lieutenant Brooks called again. His voice sounded lighter than usual. "Thought you'd like to know," he said. "The feds officially closed the case. The scam ring's been dismantled, and Rivera's charges are resolved under the diversion program. No more hearings, no more appeals." "Good to hear," I said. "Maybe now we can all sleep a little easier." "She mentioned you in her counseling session," he added. "Said you were the first person who didn't yell at her." That gave me pause. "Did she really?" "Yeah," he said. "She told the therapist that when she screamed about being the owner, you didn't mock her, you just told her to check the truth. That stuck with her." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't sure I wanted to. Well, Daniel said softly sometimes, patience is the loudest kind of justice. He hung up and I sat there for a while, phone still in my hand, letting the weight of that sentence sink in. Summer rolled into fall. The maples along the driveway turned the color of fire. The HOA, humiliated and short on funds, elected a new board that quietly promised to refocus on community harmony. No one came near my property again. The new president even mailed me a letter, handwritten, polite, almost human. Dear Mr. Ramirez, on behalf of the Green Valley HOA, I sincerely apologize for the distress caused by the previous administration. We hope to rebuild goodwill with all our neighbors. Respectfully, Sandra Miller, Green Valley HOA President. I pinned that letter beside the old one I'd gotten from Elena. I'm sorry. The two pieces of paper, side by side, looked like opposite halves of the same story. One born from ego, the other from humility. The contrast made me smile. Now, months later, I still wake early, feed the chickens, fix what's broken, and walk the boundary lines like a ritual. Some people meditate. I mend fences. The sign at the gate still reads, "Respect the line." I've had neighbors ask what it means. Some think it's about property boundaries. Others think it's a jab at the HOA. The truth is simpler and maybe deeper. It's not about fences or rules. It's about understanding where respect ends and entitlement begins. Where standing your ground stops being pride and starts being peace. I've learned that the loudest people often crave silence the most. They just don't know how to live in it. As for me, I've learned that silence can be a kind of victory. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. Maybe you've had your own Elena Rivera, someone who tried to claim a piece of your life, your time, or your dignity because they believed they could. Maybe your storm looked different, a coworker, a neighbor, a family member, but the lesson is the same. When someone tries to cross your line, you don't need to shout. You don't need to fight dirty. You just need to stand firm, stay calm, and let truth do the heavy lifting. It might take days, weeks, or even months, but truth always walks home eventually, and it always knows which gate is yours. So what about you? Have you ever had to draw your own line to say, enough, this is mine? Tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were in my shoes. And if you believe that calm can win against chaos, that truth can outlast noise, subscribe because I've got more stories where this one came from. There's always another fence, another line, another lesson waiting behind it.